Hi, I'm Kevin Herring, and I'm a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
Yes, y'all. It's time once again for another ResultsLeader.fm. It's the only show on the internet dedicated to the men and women who are getting results for their clients. Forget about thought leadership. This is all about results leadership. Yes, welcome to the show. If you're new around here, if you've been here before, welcome back. You know what we do. We talk to amazing men and women who are getting results. Today, we're going to talk to Mr. Kevin Herring from Ascent Management Consulting. He's going to talk about culture. He's going to talk about leadership. He's going to talk about how companies can turn around and empower their team to greater results. Let's jump in. Kevin, welcome to the show. Are you ready to rock this thing?
I'm ready. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Been a long time coming. So let's give our listeners a quick win. What book have you given most as a gift?
You know, I think recently the book I've most given away is Authentic Conversations. The reason for that is it was actually written by a friend of mine, a colleague, former partner. I say former, he's passed away, unfortunately, but he and his wife, Jamie and Maren Shokir, I think did an outstanding job of articulating the need for us to really understand what it means to be authentic, to be real with people, and the power in that. And I had an opportunity at one time Jamie and I were working together with a client, and we presented some of those ideas and talked about the need to be open and honest and transparent. And I had somebody raise the question with me. He said, I work a lot in PR, and so I'm trying to present a particular image of the organization. And how does that work for me? Is that wrong for me to do that? And I said, I would characterize it not so much as right or wrong, but what kind of relationship are you trying to create? And if you're in an organization or in a situation where you're trying to present the best of the organization, just present that honestly, right? And you gain credibility. I think Steve Jobs gained a lot of credibility by not exaggerating potential results of the organization, upcoming releases on earnings and so on. He was always very conservative so that there was always a big surprise, but they knew that he was never going to overstate any earnings before they came out. He was going to be pretty straightforward in saying, look, we're not going to present something that's unrealistic. We're going to give it to you straight. And I think people appreciated that. So authentic conversations, powerful way to connect with people, to develop meaningful relationships that you can believe in, right? Relationships that both of you can believe in. We do so much in our organizations that's manipulative, and I can give you lots of examples of how we do that without even recognizing it. But authentic conversations is a great eye-opener for people.
Got it on my reading list now. Thank you for that. So I want you to think back and tell us a story of how an apparent failure set you up for later success.
Well, as a consultant in the early years, I recognize and have always respected the notion of setting up the conditions for success early on, right? And so I've always appreciated that. But I had a situation where I was called in by an executive, a CEO, to work with one of his vice presidents. And he had me work through the HR vice president to set up the initial meeting. And I asked them at that time, what was the understanding of the person I was going to be coaching, I was going to be working with? And they said, we've talked to them many times about this issue of bullying and that you can't work that way in our organization. We need to change that. And he knows that you're coming in to help with that. So I went and met with the executive and asked him what was his understanding about why we were meeting and what had brought this about. Well, his understanding was completely different. He said, I'm really not sure. I was told that it might be useful for me to become a little more polished. And so I was going to have somebody to help me do that. And, well, that wasn't the issue, right? So I went back. I just said, okay, we're going to regroup and we're going to come back and meet with you. But first, I want to go back and talk to your CEO and your HR vice president, which I did. And I confronted that issue. I said, look, we need to if we're going to be successful here, we need to have open, honest, straightforward communications. He needs to understand exactly what it is that he needs to do and understand how urgent and necessary it is for him to make the shift. And he needs to hear that from you, CEO, because you're the one he reports to. And so we set that up, and then we had a three-way meeting with that person. But you can see right away it was breaking down. The whole model of going in and helping this person, coaching him when he was unaware that he had any needs, any need to change. There was no real urgency around it. It was breaking down pretty quickly. And I came out of that with an understanding that you can never take at face value what people tell you about the conditions how things are set up for you to do the work. So I always go in now and I make it clear, here are some things we need to have. And if I don't see those, I'm going to come back and we're going to regroup and we're going to do this correctly, because otherwise it's going to break down. We're not going to get the results that we've promised. And we like to promise outcomes. We like to promise results from the work we do. And so to know that we can make those bold assurances, we have to know that we've got the conditions present to enable that to happen.
What are those conditions? Because it's hard to promise results when the results come from somebody else doing the work.
Absolutely. But we've done this work long enough. We kind of know what we need to have. And so when it's one-on-one coaching, it's pretty straightforward. People know what the expectation is. The person that they report to has communicated. And so I want to be in the room when that happens. So that's one of the things I've put into the agreement is we're going to have a three-way conversation. I'm going to be there as a fly on the wall, and this is what you're going to say. And I make sure that those things happen so that the person who needs to make the changes understands that it's something they have to do, and they make some deliberate decisions around it. But the other thing is when we're working with larger groups of people, whether it's a team or an entire business unit, the conditions we have to have initially are we have to be able to have access to people and data. So that's a critical thing. We have people quite often, the plant manager or the CEO or VP of operations will say, you don't need to talk to the people down there. I've been there. I started down there. I've worked my way up. I know how things are. And my response is always, well, you know how things used to be, but you don't know how things are today because you're not there anymore. And things have probably changed pretty dramatically. So I want to have access to people and data. I want to have the understanding that I'm going in with a blank slate. I don't know what I'm going to find out. And so if there are difficult issues, I want to have an understanding that I'm going to raise those issues. And it may be you, Mr. or Miss CEO, may be contributing to some of the problems. So I want to make sure you're prepared that I'm going to raise those issues with you.
How do they take that? How do they take that? Because they're engaging you and they think that you're going to go talk to them and you say, hey, mate, I might have to talk to you. How do they take that?
That's a great point because they do. The problem is everyone else. It's never them, as they believe. Most of the time they take it pretty well, but quite often I have people who will say that very thing. It's the problem isn't me, it's them. I really need you to focus on them. And I push back and I just say, I understand that. It may very well be, but there are things that you may be doing without even realizing it that are contributing. And if I raise those issues, will you be comfortable having that conversation with me and engage me in that conversation? And sometimes they reluctantly say, yeah, if that happens, I suppose. But I don't think you're going to find that. But that and the freedom to come to my own conclusions. I always put that out there as a condition. I want to be able to draw my own conclusions and apply my own expertise to this. You may have already done your own analysis of sorts and concluded what you think the problem is and what you think the solution is. But I need to come in with an independent point of view. And I need to apply my expertise to this problem because I know if I understand things, I know whether or not I can help you. And if I can help you, I know how I can help you. And I want to be able to have that conversation with you. And so I think some people are sometimes a little uncomfortable with the pushback. But when I explain to them, look, here are the options. I mean, I can either come in and bring my expertise to bear on the situation and make some promises around what we can create as a result of that, or we can do something else. And I can come up with alternatives that can be helpful to you, but are not going to solve the problem necessarily. And I won't make the same promises to you under those conditions. So you kind of have to decide what it is you want and we'll come to some agreement there.
What would you say is the most worthwhile investment that you've ever made?
That's a great question. The most worthwhile investment is not necessarily financial. For me, it's always been investing in my curiosity. I have a natural kind of insatiable curiosity, a need to understand things. And that has been helpful to me as I've gone out, gone to school, received a couple of college degrees, but continued learning beyond that. And so I've, started out in my career. At one point, I was very interested early on in organization design. And I had some classes in that, but I really dove in and started trying to understand what's the ideal design for an organization and under what circumstances and that sort of thing. And at some point, by going through that exercise, I became an expert in organization design and realized that organization design is a tool. It's not the end goal. It's a tool. And culture is far more important. And if we create a culture where people are engaged and become one with the business in a sense, I mean, they're business people, not just people they're doing a set of tasks they're assigned, and they want the business to succeed, then they're connected with the business. And if we give them the latitude to decide the best ways to support the business, then they will find the things that are getting in the way. And we can find better ways to design the organization based on their expertise and create an organization using the principles of organization design, but built around what's best for the organization and its ability to serve the customers and provide them with what they need. So I think just investing in that, reading books, connecting with experts, getting to know some of the people that are very knowledgeable in the field, well known in the field, and establishing a relationship with them so that I can have dialogue, and always learning, always asking questions. People say, there's no stupid question. And I believe that. There is no stupid question. What's stupid is not asking the question because you'll never learn from that, right? And so investing in that, call it putting yourself out and exposing your vulnerabilities by asking the questions. That's been a great investment for me. I've learned a lot. I will add to that. My wife has helped me on this journey. I'm pretty much an introvert. And a lot of people don't believe that when they get to know me, but I am an introvert at heart. I just wired that way. And growing up, I was painfully shy. And when my wife and I met and got married, and early on, she recognized that understanding the field that I wanted to go into, that I was going to need to make some changes. And she encouraged me to take a public speaking class and talk about putting myself out there, doing something that was out of my comfort zone. But that was one of the best experiences I had. She pushed me to take computer programming classes. And I had no interest in computer programming, but it was a great learning experience and helped me in the work I've done in IT and technology organizations. I think we just have to be willing to invest in ourselves by pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zones.
We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for a public service announcement. We're going to get right back into this show, but I wanted to ask you a question. If you have been listening to the show for any amount of time and you've picked up even one single tip, then I need your help. Get the word out. Tell people about resultsleader.fm. Share it on social media. Share it on your email. Share it anywhere. #ResultsLeaderFM. Now let's jump back into the interview. Kevin, why do results matter?
Results matter because that's all the marketplace cares about. If we want to compete in a marketplace, the marketplace makes the decision whether or not we're allowed to do it, and it's based on our results. We have to produce what the marketplace demands, whether it's not whether or either or. It's profitability, quality, cycle time, customer delight, satisfaction. It's all those things. And at what level we have to measure up is determined by the marketplace. And so generating those results is what it's about. And so when I work in organizations, I see that we often have great groups of people, teams of people who work hard, do their best, and try to make a difference, but who aren't equipped to generate great results. And it's not because of their lack of effort. It's because the organization isn't set up to enable that. almost every organization I go into, I can ask a show of hands, how many employees feel like the business gets everything that you have to offer? Not do you work hard for the business, but do they get everything, your expertise, your knowledge, your capabilities? Are they really tapping those things? And almost nobody says yes. They always say, absolutely not. There's so much more I could contribute if just given the chance. And so I think that's key, is that if we want to generate results, we have to engage people and their expertise. And we do that by making them partners in the business, right? Making them connected with the business so that they understand the big picture, so that they understand how they impact that big picture, and treat them like business people, not like widget makers, so that they are more acting in the interest of the whole business or the whole business unit.
Okay, I want to go a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah.
I think the words that you used there were really interesting. If given the chance, I could contribute more if given the chance. So, because I hear you talking, like the overarching thing I hear you talking about is culture, and then having a culture of growth and of contribution is what I'm hearing. But what's an example? How do we give them the chance to show us that they have more potential than we are capable of seeing?
Yeah, I worked in a production facility one time that was having major problems, quality breakdowns, production shutdowns. It was a mess, and they were about to lose some of the major contracts that were essential to their survival. And so I was calling, kind of almost an emergency call to, come in and, you were referred. Can you help us turn something around very quickly? And so when I went into the organization, that's one of the things I do, is I do an analysis to see where they are in terms of leadership practices, culture, and results that they're generating, and what kinds of things are getting in the way, and so on. And I came back and I reported to them that there's some leadership practices that were removing the sense of accountability and responsibility and commitment that employees had, and that we could change that around and get better results. And some of the handoff breakdowns that were occurring were because people weren't thinking about the bigger picture. They weren't thinking in terms of, what do we need to accomplish overall? They were just thinking, what are my tasks that I need to perform? And then I throw it over the wall to the next person, and then they have to figure out what to do with it from there. And it's a very common problem, right? And so one of the things we did there is we educated leaders on how to lead differently, how to empower people, how to give them tools, and how to transfer their knowledge and expertise to the line workers. And then we met with all the line workers in large group meetings and talked to them about their own decisions about how to operate in the organization. In other words, were they pretty much internally committed and engaged? Were they disengaged? Were they cynical? Did they feel like they were victims? And confronted those choices that they had made and enabled them to consider operating differently, thinking differently about their position in the organization. And with the leaders giving them more latitude to analyze the work and find better ways to do it, and to figure out how to resolve those handoff problems and things like that. That's the kind of thing that changed that organization and really turned it around. In fact, that was a pretty remarkable turnaround. They actually doubled productivity in a very short period of time. But I think that's the notion, that if we enable people to use the expertise they already have about what's wrong in the organization, about what's not working, where the breakdowns are, and how things could be done better. If you talk to people one-on-one, they'll share all that, they'll, in a safe environment, they'll share all that. But you want to create an environment where it's always safe to not only share ideas, but to actually take action and make things better. I always think it's funny in businesses that businesses will set up some kind of suggestion program or something, and it's always anonymous. Why would you want people to be afraid to make your business better? I mean, that's a horrible, I'd hate to think my business would operate that way. I make it easy for everybody to raise issues, even if it's to raise a concern about a decision that I made personally, to say, wait a minute, Kevin, I've got a concern about that. Great. What is it? Let's talk about it. And sometimes I'll ask people to argue the other side of the decision and say, is that a bad decision? Let's argue it. And let's see if we can't flesh out anything we missed to make sure we don't do the wrong thing. And so I think you've got to make it safe and a positive experience for people to step up and raise difficult issues, to challenge the status quo, to want to change things for the better, not just make suggestions, but to act on those ideas.
What area of your business would you like better results?
That's an easy one. We have always relied on people finding out about us through articles that we published. We used to publish a lot of articles. I used to be on the speaking circuit all the time, doing national and international keynote speeches and things of that nature. And people would get to know us and get on our newsletter, but mostly it was referrals, word of mouth that brought people in. And we've decided we really want to transfer our expertise more broadly than we have in the past. We want to reach more people. And to do that, we've got to come up with a better model for getting the word out there. Now, one of the things we did change is that instead of everything being in-person consulting, we've created alternatives. And we've been playing around with the use of technology for 10 or 15 years, trying to figure out ways to push our expertise more broadly out to leaders in the country and outside of the country, for that matter. We now have, for instance, we've offered our 90-day turnaround program, where we've always done that work in person. We didn't call it the 90-day turnaround, but we figured it always seemed to be about 3 months where we made the transformation. And we really had it narrowed down to the key things that make a difference. And so we created this alternatives now where we have an online program that transfers that expertise to a leader who then takes their team through a series of steps over 90 days to create that turnaround. Or alternatively, they can join us in as a cohort group, and we'll do 6 live sessions over the course of the 90 days and do some of our live consulting remotely, in addition to having some of the work already set up online that they can work through at their own pace. So we're trying to do some things to expand that capability and transfer it to leaders more broadly. And I think that's helped us to get better results, or get more people to get good results. But I think what we need to do better is to get that word out. We need to start looking at some serious communication tools and things to help us to do that better. And we're starting to do that. We're engaging more on social media and things, but we've got a ways to go.
What results are you most proud of?
Anytime that we've worked with a work group, a team, or a business unit, and we've turned things around where we've created just remarkable results, and people say, I never thought this was possible. That's where the satisfaction really comes, because we help people do what they think is impossible. But we know it's not, because we've seen it so many times in the work that we do. One of the best examples, I think, is the one I shared with you briefly just a couple of minutes ago, where we doubled productivity. There was an organization that was about to lose everything. We not only turned it around, but we doubled their productivity, didn't lose a single employee in that process, empower them to be able to contribute at higher levels and to solve problems on the fly, gave them cross-trained people to be able to do a lot of different tasks and broaden their reach to work as a team where they could all solve problems that were outside of their typical scope of work each day. And then to shift the mindset of the leaders so that instead of them taking all of the accountability for everything, to shift that and share it with core employees so that employees now felt they could choose commitment and accountability for the success of the whole organization and not have it all be on the formal leaders. That was a shift that was very exciting. I've spoken about that a number of times where I've done a anatomy of a turnaround kind of a discussion, but that was a great one. Yeah.
Any parting thoughts you'd like to share with the results leaders who are listening to us right now?
If you want to take your business to a new level, if you really want to get people engaged and get better results, the thing to do is look real hard at how you're using people and what your stance is about them. And most of the time when I talk to groups about leaders, about what they believe people are capable of doing, they fall into one of two camps. One is they don't trust people generally. They don't feel like they're dependable unless they're watched, checked up on, and that sort of thing, versus another group that feels like employees are generally desirous of doing a good job. They're reasonably dependable. They want to contribute, want to find some meaning and purpose at work, and so they trust them. And I call that the difference between a low trust, high control leader versus a high trust, low control leader, right? And so we find that that stance about people drives our intentions and how we interact with people. Then that also leads to practices that either engage people or disengage them. And so I think the best thing to do is figure out what your stance is. What do you believe about people? And confront it. And if you find that you've got a stance that disengages people because you're too high control, you're not trusting enough, then take a hard look at your intentions and what you can do to try to turn that around. And if you find that it's not a good fit for you, it's difficult to do, then I'd encourage you to take a leap of faith and just simply say, I'm going to try it, and not just superficially, but I'm going to give it a serious shot, and I'm going to try to prepare people to be able to make decisions that I've been making all the time in the past. Because when I want people to take responsibility, if I try to hold them accountable for something, I've removed that responsibility and I've taken it back on myself. I don't want to do that. If you want people to engage, to commit, and to choose accountability instead of you trying to hold them accountable, then you've got to confront your stance and you've got to treat them like business people, business partners.
Wow. I know our listeners are going to want more. Where can they get more from you, Kevin?
Well, two places. One is the90dayturnaround.com. You have to have the word the 90dayturnaround.com. And the other is my website, ascentmanagement.com, which is spelled ASCENTMGT.com.
Excellent. We will have links in the show notes. Thank you, Kevin, for hanging out with us. Thank you, results leaders, for tuning in. Another episode is in the can. That is a wrap for another edition of resultsleader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to resultsleader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.